As an exemplar for a new social contract and inclusive planning, the Preparing for Subject-Based ESD Together here was drawn from the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands, where teachers looked at the specific contents in their curriculum in a primary school setting, and they looked at the focal point around cattle and care for cattle as Nguni people, and looked at the matters of concern associated with the health of local cattle. And they were able to then select some materials from the e-learning library related to cattle as a starting point, which enabled them to map out the curriculum competencies along with the sustainable development competences and to plan learning progressions. In this case, the approach they used related to ethics. It also related to local issues related to cattle, and also the heritage associated with cattle. So the teachers, according to the context, had different stories that they built into their life orientation curriculum, using learning tasks to start up the idea for the students to inquire into cattle at a local level, and then to analyze their data and to look at handprint actions to improve the situation in their local area. And of course, the assessment of learning was done in the conventional way and also expanded to include the significant learning that occurred. And here were the Kamishibai startup with the Mkomba Ndlela approach, which is stories that show the way. This was the startup story for exploring how things were in the past to produce the conditions of contaminated and degraded pastures and cattle health that we find today. And then a simple ecosystem allowed them to explore ecological animations of the patterns of interdependence of cattle in the ecosystem with other species. And then the cultural side, the way that the imifino seeds were part of the sustainable food heritage practices, because the cattle dung would fertilize their gardens and produce wild foods, imifino, that the grandmothers would use for nutritious food in the home. And then the activity was a simulation, which was using the small little chocolate beans of Smarties. These were scattered around, and it explored pasture degradation and how herding practices can sustain quality grasslands in open pastures. So this was an example of a handprint engagement and learning sequence that a teacher had developed with partner teachers and also in different ways in their classrooms in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands. And here are the references for the materials that they used.